There we go. Hello, Bekah Read. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. Welcome to Mending Families. So I am excited to have you on because you're my friend. Yay for friends,
Yes. Yes. This is
right?
just so casual for us, but except
Yeah,
for we're usually in person, but that's
I
okay.
know we're usually in person. And I noticed that you left your coffee lid at my house. And I was like,
Oh.
oh, I can get, oh, wait, we're going to be over Zoom.
Oh.
So it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, Bekah, you're my friend. But I know that you have experience with foster care, but not in the US. And I am
Mhm.
so intrigued by that. And I would love for us to talk about that a little bit today. But first, can you tell everybody? Can you hear my cat?
No.
Okay, I'm so glad because he's like scratching at the door. Um, can you introduce yourself?
Yes.
Okay.
So my name is Becca, and after I graduated college, I um felt like I wanted to do mission work. I majored in mass communications and Spanish. So I went down to Honduras, and we'll go into it more later, but like I
Yeah,
went
yeah.
down with the intention of doing like social media for a nonprofit, like very much. And then 11 days in, I had a child placed in my arms. So um,
Okay.
that like just kind of changed the trajectory because then when I was in Honduras for a year and a half, when I came back to the US, I got like a normal 9 to 5 marketing job, what I thought I would do. And it just, for me, it didn't work. Like it didn't align with like what my passion was, which was
Mm,
like foster care and like babies and children. So that combined with like, as I thought about like my future, about like wanting to foster in the future and have kids in the future, I wanted to be home with them. And so at that point, I decided to go out and start my own business. And that's what has been what I've been doing the past 5 years. Bekah Read Creative is my business, and I do website design and have website courses. And I designed your website.
you
So
did, and it's amazing. Everyone should check it out. Yes.
um, yeah, it's pretty great. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's like what I've been doing. And then a year ago, I had a baby, and so now I'm doing like the balancing of like working, kind of, but mostly being home with her.
Sure. Yeah. And are we talking about the one on the way
Oh
or?
yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I have another baby coming. So I'm sure that'll throw me another curveball of like what I feel like I had a whole year of like just like I don't know how to do this balance.
Yeah.
And then I just finally figured it out, which you helped me. You're like, so there's this thing called daycare. And I'm like, what?
Yes.
And it's not
It's
like,
not evil.
it's
No, it's not
no, it's
bad.
great. And
Yeah.
it has been, and she's like, my daughter's like the most social person I've ever met.
Hmm.
So she thrives, and we do daycare once a week, and it's been the best thing for like my mental health, my passion for my business, like because I was at a point where I was like, I hate my business.
Hmm.
And now I get to like, I look forward to that one day a week, but then when I have her the next day, I am a better mom to her and I'm more
Yeah.
present. So it's just been I've loved the balance. And then we're going to throw another kid in, and I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So,
It's fine. You just, who knows? But that day will come.
yeah, it'll be good. So, yeah, that's that.
Okay. So, also you're married.
Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention that. He's so awesome. I'm married to a guy named Sam, and he's a college coach at the university here, and he's spectacular. We ran in college together, and just have dated and then married and then had a kid.
That's wonderful. And you guys really balance each other out too.
Yeah, um, he's like, yeah, God knew like when he like made that happen because I'm high. I have like a lot of mental health sort of stuff, like
You're not
anxiety.
high.
I'm not high. Did I
You
say
said
that?
I'm high.
Oh my gosh. This is my brain processing.
Fine.
I have a lot of, I need that support. And he's like the most calm, peaceful individual
Yes.
if ever, like I've just never experienced that before. So it's been really cool to be married to somebody who's just so chill. He teaches me a new way of living, and
Yeah.
I'm excited to raise a kid with him. And my parents did a great job, not at all saying that they didn't, but to get the different perspective of how to raise a kid without anxiety
Hmm.
is really interesting. So I've been enjoying that.
Yeah. One of the things that I like about Sam is when when he would volunteer in children's church, it was always my goal to try and get him to A, smile, B, laugh. And I think almost every time I was successful. So there it is.
Well, in his defense, he had to do church setup at 5 a.m.,
Yeah.
5:30 a.m. So, I mean, if I had been up at 5:30, I probably wouldn't be smiling much either. But
He did great though.
he's very quiet around everyone except for us. But
Yeah,
yeah.
he's great.
Mhm.
Okay, so tell me a little bit. You've touched on this some about how becoming a mom changed how you did business with your small business. Can
Yeah.
you talk more about that? Like what was that like? We have expectations going into motherhood, and then it's never what we expect. So can you
Not
walk
at
us through
all.
that? Walk us through
And
that journey.
I think I like felt like I would be more prepared and like just because I had experienced motherhood, right? Like I'd
Mhm.
already raised, at least I would be prepared for the first 4.5 months because that's how long I had Judah. So I was like, I've got this. And then it's just so different. But
Yeah.
I think some of the big changes that I made, like even when I was just pregnant, I know the research that says like, heightened cortisol levels, like how that affects the baby in the womb. And so I was not willing any longer to bend over backwards for clients like I had
Mhm.
in the past. Um, and for me, like one of the biggest stressors in my life in the beginning years of my business were certain clients. And I just it's one of those things where I was like, money's not worth it at this point. So
Yeah.
that was a big change that I made in pregnancy. And then now, like same thing, like I have been kind of pivoting my services a lot. Like I did custom website designs for many years, and then um, that combined with the fact that like I really love serving more new entrepreneurs, and I realized my custom design services, you just raise prices, right? So it wasn't becoming
Mhm.
attainable. So that's when I started to create website in a day, and that was a great service for the year that I raised my child at home, because I would just get hired help for that one day, and I
Sure.
would do two a month, and it brought in great income. But the service, it's just things are constantly changing. You have to constantly pivot with your business. And so in the end, like in the beginning, it worked great. And in the end, it
Yeah.
wasn't working great. And so then I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, we're going to pivot and change again. And now I'm like, I had some passive income, two passive income streams, which passive income is never passive. But anyway, that's a
Yeah.
different thing.
Yeah.
There are two courses. And so now I'm like, I really want to go back into this. I really enjoy this really low level, like low priced option, because it really can serve that brand new entrepreneur and really help them. So now I'm like really digging more into that and how can I cultivate and grow that. So it's just constantly changing, but
Yeah.
it's fun to figure
Yeah.
out new things.
What about how you felt as a mom?
Um, I think in the beginning, in the way beginning, like when she was first born,
Mhm.
I mean, I just love newborns. Like I love them. Um, so that was like I felt like the balance was really good with, and I will say I took a 3 month maternity leave. Didn't work the first
Okay.
3 months. So that also
Okay.
like plays into everything.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, and yeah, didn't work at all. And then, but even the first couple months of picking up work, I think I was like kind of a little bit reinvigorated because I hadn't done my business for a little bit and like things were going really well. And then when she was probably about 6 months, she had a lot of like just different medical things that we were trying to figure out as well. And so that combined with, uh, because of those medical things, she was uncomfortable her whole
Mhm.
life and just
Yeah.
like didn't feel good. And so that played out in her personality, and she was tough. She was a
Mhm.
tough kid to be around. And so being home with a tough kid, like it just like threw me for a loop, because the first baby that I had was so easy. And I think like
Sure.
that was like for me, I'm like, that was the Lord's grace on me, because if I would have had a baby that was really tough, especially not even thinking I was going to be a mom, I was 22, I was in Honduras, like
Yeah.
I didn't think that was going to happen. Um, so that was great. I'm glad that he was easy, but then having this baby that was really tough, I was just it was confusing. I felt like
Mhm.
I was doing something wrong. And at
Mhm.
the time we didn't know it. Like she just didn't feel good. So it's like, what is happening? Like I
Yeah.
am home with you all day. So I'm the one who's like at fault here. It was just very confusing for me. and very stressful, very overwhelming.
Yeah.
Um, but I think just like one, figuring that out, her medical stuff, and
Yeah.
then also putting her in daycare has allowed us to just thrive better. Um, and like I said, like be more present when she's here and stuff like that. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it totally does. And did you feel like you had to, I mean, was it like taking her to the doctor and the doctors are figuring everything out and you're just doing what they say, or did you really have to advocate for her
Yeah. I,
care?
I was thankful to have you and other people who have been in the foster care world, because I think you guys have had a lot of kids come through your care that have had things. And so you presented me with ideas, and I was able to go to the doctor and be like, what about a swallow study? What
Hmm.
about like all these other things, where I would have just been a lot less knowledgeable. But
Sure.
I will say, like, I knew that something was not
Something
right.
was
Like,
off.
I
Yeah.
just knew, and because she wasn't doing the vomiting, like for her it was like for her she had dairy intolerance and soy, and we didn't figure it out until she was 1. And so
Hmm.
that whole time she felt terrible, and I knew, and I was able to like I did keep on pushing the doctor, and then ended up going to a new doctor, and thank the Lord, because when I did go to that new doctor, the doctor literally just looked at her and was like, is her stomach always this bloated?
Mm.
And is she always this constipated? And then immediately got us into a gastroenterologist. And so those things, like, yeah, and that way I really had to continue to advocate for her. But I am,
Yeah.
like I said, I wouldn't have even known what to ask. I was a first time
Yeah.
mom. Like, um, had I
Yeah.
not had people around me just being like, why don't you ask this question? Why don't you ask this,
Hmm.
this kind of thing.
And you didn't take that in the way of like, stop telling me how to parent. I'm the mom. You took
No,
it as like, thank you.
I was
Yeah. Okay.
totally like, because I just, yeah, I knew, I was the only one that knew something was wrong with her. I felt like my
Yeah.
husband has never been around babies before. I've been around multiple babies. And so I was like, this is not normal to have a baby that's just this cranky
Hmm.
and, and just hard, like, is not normal. And so it just felt like I was alone in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. So then
Yeah.
having somebody to come up with different like ideas of potentially what could be wrong
You
was,
welcomed that.
yeah, I welcomed
Yeah.
it. It was reassuring that like, and I think one of the best things that happened was we had a nutritionist come. And again, we had to get a new nutritionist because the nutritionist we were
Hmm.
seeing wasn't helping
Catching
us.
stuff. Yeah. Hmm.
And having that new nutritionist come and just say like, is her personality always like this?
Hmm.
Which is very, very reassuring.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So let's talk about Honduras now, shall we?
Yeah.
So you went to Honduras to do social media and marketing,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
So, and then you said until they placed a baby in my arms. So can you walk us through that whole story?
Yeah. So Honduras in 2014 didn't have any type of foster care arrangement. It was kids go to orphanages immediately. They're born, they're abandoned, they go to an orphanage. And I just want to say this overarching, some orphanages are really, really good in how they're set up. They have more family home types. A
Hmm.
lot of them don't have
Okay.
that. A lot of them are just the big room with
Yeah.
the caretakers that rotate. Um,
Yeah.
and then there's the public orphanage. And the public orphanage was terrible. I mean, kids
Okay.
they're in crates. Pretty much is
Oh
what
my
it is. So
gosh.
they are stacked like the kind of hard to explain, but the way it was set up was like they were stacked 4 high,
Oh wow.
the cribs, and then you would put the baby in the crib and then you would pull it up. So it was an actual
Oh
crate.
my gosh.
And the reason they ended up coming up with this model was because prior to that they would have 4 babies in like a standard crib like what we have,
Uh-huh.
and kids, and then if a baby got sick, all the babies would get
All
sick.
of them got sick.
So
Yeah.
this method at least allowed
Oh
prevention of sickness. So I
my
go into this
gosh.
public orphanage and I'm like, these kids are in crates, they're in cages. One, two, they some observations I made, no crying, not one baby cried. I was like, these
Oh,
babies are
interesting.
perfect. Why are they perfect? They're not getting cared for.
Yeah.
There would be 10 to 20 babies, 10 to 25 babies, and 1 to 2 caretakers.
Oh wow.
So you can't feed that many, you don't have that many hands. And so bottles were just placed on like towels and kind of drained into their mouth. And
Oh
so babies
wow.
would literally die. They would choke and they would die.
Oh,
Um, there was never diapers. Like they always just had cloth. It wasn't a cloth diaper. It was just like a piece of fabric wrapped
sure.
around, kind of pinned, but not really. And then they would
Hmm.
just soil them, soil them, soil them, soil them. I mean, in no way were these babies thriving.
Sure.
And so when
Well, how
I,
could they?
right, when I came, this particular baby was going to be going to one of the public orphanages. And
Okay.
so the kind of the leader of our organization, I guess, saw that and was like saw him at the hospital and asked if she could take him instead.
Okay.
But she wasn't able to actually care for him.
Okay.
But she had like 4 kids of her own and just was back and forth between the states. So then it was like, and I had been there, I think 12 days
Oh my gosh.
in Honduras. Yeah, just did not know anything. And he was just placed in my arms.
Hmm.
And he was 11 days old when I got him. Um, and yeah, just little sweet boy. We named him Judah. The goal was always to find him a family, like foster care, to find him a family. Reintegration was not, I mean, the mom abandoned him at birth.
Okay.
I don't
Okay.
even know. I mean, yes, they would have been able to access like the mom because there was a birth certificate, but there was no, mom had
She
no
wasn't
interest.
around.
It's
Yeah.
pretty typical there for babies to be abandoned at the hospital by the moms, and
Okay.
actually, or either left at the hospital or the mom will leave the hospital and people are outside the hospital and will purchase the baby off the mom.
Oh, wow. That's not
Yeah,
okay.
no.
Oh my
Whether it's for
gosh.
because they can't have their own child or for sex trade sort of thing. So
Trafficking. Yeah.
yeah, really terrible. Just I mean, there was no foster care system. Like
Is
the
there now?
So then we tried to kind of implement it. The organization
Okay.
I was part of, we tried to kind of implement it. And my organization, and I wasn't really like a huge part of this. This was more like
Hmm.
the leaders of it, but Reach Out Orphanage Ministries came in and so they started getting these babies and they're like finding them foster homes.
Hmm.
What we found to be really difficult was getting Hondurans to take babies.
Oh,
Uh,
wow. Okay.
they're just there's this mentality, and I think maybe it's kind of Central American culture in general of this is my flesh and blood, and if they're not my flesh
Yeah.
and blood, I'm
Yeah.
not caring for them. And of
Okay.
course there's exceptions to this, but that seemed to be what we were encountering a lot. So a
Hmm.
lot of the foster placements we made were with American missionaries who were
Okay.
down there for different reasons. They
Hmm.
all, maybe medical or whatever, but they would take a baby.
Hmm.
um so that was that. And in my particular case, it was I was never going to be long term with Judah. It was always like just trying to find him, get him through like adoption or something.
Hmm.
And actually, the leader of our organization, the director of our nonprofit at the time, ended up wanting him. And so I had him for 4.5 months while she was kind of figuring things out in the States. And then she came back to Honduras. She's married to a Honduran and had
Okay.
3 kids. And she was the one who took Judah
Okay.
and then adopted him.
Oh, okay.
So
So she
um,
has him.
she has him. He'll be 9 in September, so he's 8.
Oh.
And he's doing really well. But yeah, he lives there with them. That adoption was quicker because it was a Honduran family. She had a
Okay.
residency, and then her husband is Honduran, so that
Hmm.
adoption took 5, 6 years. But most of the kids that have gone, so when
That's
Room,
funny that you say that's quick.
that was
Five,
quick.
6 years.
Yeah, that was
Oh
quick.
gosh.
Most of the kids that came into Room, so what happened because the government didn't understand, um, they didn't understand like foster care really. So what they did is they said, okay, Room is like Reach Out Orphanage Ministries, the ministry I was part
Uh-huh.
of, is the orphanage.
Okay.
We're placing a kid in the orphanage.
Even though it
But
was
then
foster homes.
but then they knew that we were
Yeah.
like placing them in foster homes. So it's not like we were
Sure.
doing anything like that they didn't know. They knew, but it's like they just couldn't recognize foster
Yeah.
care. So
Yeah.
we tried to implement it and it just, so this was back in 2014. and it just didn't work. And I don't know,
Okay.
I don't think that the organization I was a part of was equipped to do it
Mm-hmm.
financially. Or a lot of the kids we ended up getting had a lot of different medical issues. It
Yeah.
just so
Yeah.
happened. And so like we weren't equipped and tried for many, many years and it just didn't work. So
Yeah.
that's where it's at now, is now this we're just trying to get the kids that we have, the 13 in the care, we're just trying to get them adopted, and they're
Yeah.
9 years old, and most of them
Yeah.
are not adopted. I would say half at this point are adopted.
So there wasn't really a foster care system.
No,
So
and there
who,
still isn't
and there
really.
still isn't. But
No.
so when you were there, like who was there to help you, support you, give you
Mm.
resources? What did that look like?
I actually had a pretty good system because
Okay.
I lived in a house with a family who was also a missionary family. They had four biological kids, and they were fostering at the time a boy as well. So we were both fostering newborn babies.
Okay.
So that couple, the mom and dad, they had their newborn baby plus their four kids. I had my newborn baby, and I lived in the house with them. And then my friend Casey also lived in the room with me and Judah, and she had Jesus, who was had hydrocephalus, and
Okay.
this was 6 when she got him, and weighed maybe 12 pounds, 13
Oh,
pounds around
wow.
there. So he was a huge medical case, but
Yeah.
yeah, so that was our like crew in our house. And
Mhm.
so for me, like, in order to like, I don't even really want to say thrive, to survive, running is a part of my life. And so I was like, I need to like, probably about 3 times a week, I needed to go for a run.
Okay.
So, but
Yeah.
that was fine. Like I had the caretakers, Cassie or Casey could watch Judah, and I was able to go for my runs.
Mhm.
So I was like surrounded by a very tight knit community. We were all eating together. We were all, and
Yeah.
so it's just kind of, we
Like a
were all,
family.
yeah, we were all, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
So that part was really great.
Okay.
There was a lot of like unknowns when it came to like figuring out government stuff, or Judah got really
Yeah.
sick one time, his intestines twisted. Um, and it landed us in the hospital, and I all of a sudden became an advocate for
Mhm.
a 2-month-old baby who was getting surgery. And it was like, I know Spanish because I majored, but I don't know Spanish, like, and all of a sudden I'm like, they're telling me medical Spanish, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I have no
Ah,
idea
yeah.
what you're
You're like,
saying.
"Wait, let
So
me look that up really quick."
yeah. And there was no Wi-Fi there, so I wasn't even able to like look up certain things. Like I would just try to like one time I remember they handed me this bag of fluid with this thing in it. Okay. And they're like, SOS, this is blah blah blah. And I was like, great.
Don't know
What
what you
am I
said.
doing? What do you want me to do with it? Do you want me to bring it to a
Yeah.
lab? Like, what am I doing with this?
Yeah.
And they're like, no, puede traer a la casa. You can bring it to your house. Okay, sounds good. So I kept that word in my mind, and when a Honduran came through that knew English, I said, what is this? What did they give me? And then she goes, oh, that is his appendix. And I was like, why do I have his appendix? She goes, you can bring it home if you want to like show people.
Oh.
Like, why would I want to show like just the things that happen? I was like,
Yeah.
this would never be even somewhat allowed in the US, but
Yeah.
like, just, yeah, so there was a lot of like just like stuff, like crazy things like that, or just, I mean, even the medical bill itself. So we had him in a private hospital because the public
Okay.
hospital there is no,
Nope. Yeah.
you're not doing that. We had him in a private hospital, and I think our 3 nights there cost about $37, including his surgery.
$37?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow. That's
a lot
crazy.
of crazy experiences. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we actually ended up, when Judah was about 2 months, another little boy came into our care. He was in the public orphanage, so in that really bad one, and he had
Yeah.
this limp, and that was it. Like, and I would visit the public orphanage, even though I had Judah, I would still sometimes go. And me and another one of the volunteer missionaries, we just like had a passion for this kid. Like we just,
Mhm.
he's just so smiley and cute and loved him. And I don't know, like, I mean, I think now, like, the Lord knew he needed to not be in the public orphanage. But so we ended up getting him out of the public orphanage and brought him into our care. So he was my, like, I guess, second foster, but I balanced, like, I cared for him and Cassie did. So there was two
Okay.
people caring
Yeah.
for him. And he ended up having leukemia. So that was
Oh,
what the
wow.
limp was. And so there was a lot of nights. Cassie would spend days because she had 4 kids, bio kids that she had to care
Yeah.
for. So she would spend days in the hospital, and I'd spend nights in the hospital. And same thing. It was just like wild because it's like he's
Yeah.
getting chemotherapy and they're speaking. And then on top of that, they're wearing masks. So it's like I can't even kind of lip
Yeah.
read it. Yeah, that language barrier was
Hard.
crazy, just
Yeah.
crazy as someone who's not fluent. And I would
Yeah.
say in certain countries, like in Costa Rica, I probably would be at an 80% level of understanding for Spanish.
Yeah.
But Honduran Spanish was just so tough to the way their accents and
Yeah.
that
Hmm.
and yeah, so it was really quite the adventure.
Yeah. So as you're telling these stories, I'm hearing a lot of what I would say trauma for these kids, but also for you guys as the caregivers. Um, so did you know what that like as yeah, I mean, did you know what that was? Were you like, oh, this has to be because they experienced A, B, and C? Or was it just like we're just getting through each day by day?
Oh, we were just getting through day by day for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, the way that I like when I think about the experience, so the city that we lived in was San Pedro Sula. And at that time in 2014, that was the most dangerous city in the world that's not a war zone.
Oh, wow.
And the temperatures, which you maybe would love, but I did not thrive, were it would be like it was usually about 100 degrees, but then with the humidity, you'd be about 115, 120.
Okay.
We didn't have AC in our house, so
Hmm.
we had fans blowing on us at all times. Um, it was a living hell. It was
Yeah.
I don't really know any other way to explain it. Like my mom when I was there, I just remember calling her, crying, so overwhelmed at one point, and she's like, "This is like the refining fire that you like hear about, and like." And I knew that I would be refined and all that, but it was just yeah, like
Uh-huh.
at the time, I loved being a mom. That was something that I like. That was kind of when I realized like that's like what I want to do for like the rest of my life. But everything else was awful. I
Awful.
couldn't leave my colonia, my little gated community, which had armed guards at every entrance, about 4 armed guards at every entrance, and then 24/7 armed guards on bikes. When I say armed, I mean armed.
Yeah.
This is where we lived. So
Yeah.
I couldn't leave that gated community. I mean it was just it was yeah, it was
So
very
you guys were all just in survival. I mean, the kids were in
that's
survival, you all were in survival.
it.
So there
Mm-hmm.
was probably no space to even be like, this feels like this might be trauma. Let's look
No,
into this. Because you're like
no.
in the fire.
Yeah, no. There was no way.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So now that you're out of it and it's been 8 years, almost
Mm-hmm.
9 years, do you see now how trauma was a part of maybe why the kids did certain things or why you guys did certain things?
Yeah, I think I didn't see the trauma play out. Uh, I mean, I would see it play out with the babies that like didn't cry, but like
Yeah.
with the babies in our care, we got them pretty early.
Yeah.
Um, so I didn't really see it play out with them,
Mhm.
but I mean, yes, I saw it like with Anthony, the boy who had cancer, like just different things that he would do, see like just how accommodating and how much he would seek love,
Mm.
and different things like that. And yeah, that would be playing out. And now like reflecting on like my experience,
Mhm.
there's definitely especially different aspects of what I went through. Like Anthony ended up having an illegal adoption um
Oh my gosh.
through the US. And it wasn't an adoption because you can't adopt kids that have living parents. Like that's like
Yeah.
one of the reasons Honduras adoptions take 9 years. Um,
Yeah.
and so he had living parents, even though they were not equipped
Not
to
around.
care.
Mhm.
And so I say adoption because that's the easiest term, but like an
Mhm.
illegal transfer of care, we'll say, I guess. And so we had people show up at our house. We were given 12-hour warning. Hey, somebody's coming to take Anthony. And he was taken from our care and brought to the US for better treatment. And his body, I mean, he had lived on the streets for 3 years, had eaten rice and beans. He didn't speak a lick of English. Like,
Mm-hmm.
thankfully, he knew Spanish, but his family, parents, whatever, that took him to the US, they didn't know any Spanish. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, just was that experience of him leaving our care with no notice, no
Mm-hmm.
time for us to transition him, and knowing what he was about to go
Mm-hmm.
through.
Yeah.
That probably was one of the bigger traumas for me, at least. And then he did end up dying in the US. And I think a
Oh,
big part of that was because the treatment he got in Honduras, although it was not as fast, that's what his body could handle too.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think the treatment here was just so aggressive
So
because
aggressive.
treatment,
Mm-hmm.
and his tiny little body couldn't handle that.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's been a lot of just like what ifs there, and like, not that I could have done anything, there was nothing I could do,
Mm-hmm.
but that has been something that's probably been probably one of the more traumatic things that I experienced, that
Mm-hmm.
kind of had to start working through with counseling. I'll need to work through it more. Definitely bitterness, anger, a lot
Mm-hmm.
of just like disassociation and trying
Mm-hmm.
to just kind of forget about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, definitely things.
So you have a lot of friends here that are foster parents and you have helped take care of their kids. And so you very much have seen foster care here in the States.
Mm-hmm.
It's very different than what you experienced in Honduras.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see a difference in how the kids are?
I mean, you have to remember that the realm of the amount of kids I can analyze that were in foster care in Honduras is limited to six,
Sure.
12
Yeah.
kids. Six that I maybe have. So that's hard to say. Because foster care is not really a thing anymore.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
kids that taken were all taken as babies. They were all because of the fact that those babies were going to go to the public orphanage, and we knew that their chances of survival were small. Those were
Yeah.
the ones that room put as high priority, find them care. So now, like, I'm still connected with 3 boys in particular.
Okay.
And because they're being raised by 2 of my friends down there,
Yeah.
um, a married couple down there. So those 3 boys, I guess, what I'm trying to say, it's similar, but that's only because they are being raised by people who are at least somewhat TBRI trained.
Okay.
They are American, so they like have a very American, like the boys don't, those 3 boys don't speak Spanish.
Okay.
So yeah, that in terms of like the foster care systems parallel, yeah, I
Yeah.
guess they're similar-ish, but like there's also not, foster care is not a thing. So really the parallel that I think maybe you'd be asking is like the orphanages that are better, so not the bad ones, the
Mm-hmm.
orphanages that are better and foster care. And I those are very different.
Yeah. Yeah.
The kids are very, very, very different.
Yeah.
I do see some parallels, like just like like stealing. When
Yeah.
like certain kids that steal, that like you're like, why are you like, you have been in this home, this orphanage or this foster home for since you were 2 or since you were 1, so like why is that why is that something you're struggling with
Mm-hmm.
as now a 7-year-old or a 5-year-old when you never needed to steal, really? But it's like certain things like that. I think I see that parallel. Like, kids are
Yeah.
kids, humans are humans, and trauma is trauma. And whether it was birth trauma or their first year of life trauma, that's something I see a parallel in a lot. But I think what I see less of in the US, maybe this is just I don't have a
Sure.
huge experience,
Yeah.
but a lot of the kids, the cycle repeats a lot more, I think, in Honduras,
Okay.
in
Okay.
terms of like sexual abuse,
Yep.
girls running away from orphanages,
Yeah.
and boys, but I was part of a girls' orphanage. Um, yeah, and just like, then like, even though like these, like the one orphanage I worked with was a girls' home, and like a lot of the girls had lived there their whole life and have been raised by
Oh,
great people who are
yeah.
Christian, wonderful and loving. but trauma is trauma.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even if you had came to that orphanage when you were 2, there was a constant cycle of
There's
new
still
kids.
stuff there. Yeah. Uh-huh.
The constant cycle of new kids would bring in
Yep.
more new traumas, whereas like, and again, that's a home of 30. So like you don't really see that as much here.
Yeah.
Homes of 30. And now that particular home I went to it was 30, like all of them
Okay.
together. Now they have separated it into houses, and I'm still very connected. And it's better. Like there's
Okay.
less runaways. There's less. It seems to be like the girls who are starting to age, because they used to be like they would get to 18, and even though they had a great education, they would just forego it and end up on the streets and pregnant.
Well,
It's
yeah. I mean,
like,
yeah, if they never were able to heal from the trauma they experienced, even if it was just in utero and they had the healthiest child, like that's the importance of healing is we can't just say, "Oh, I'm better now," because it doesn't work like that.
right,
So,
right.
yeah. Um, okay. So I just have a couple more questions, but before I ask you, is there anything else that you feel like you want to share with our listeners?
Not in particular.
Okay.
Not that
That's
I can
okay.
think of.
Okay. What do you wish more people would ask about foster care and adoption? Maybe specific to international.
Yeah. I think that I wish more people would just ask, like, what can I do? Like, I
Yeah.
get that not everyone can be a foster mom, but do you have $20 a month? Like,
Yeah.
if people knew how, and this is international that I'm more
Sure.
referring to,
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
people knew how far, like, I just told you about how much it
Yeah.
costs that medical bill. If
Hmm.
people knew how far,
$20 goes.
$20 goes there, and like, it's just insane. Like one of the kids that's down in Honduras that my friend is raising, he's 9 and he has a lot of therapies. He has a lot of special needs, and like for him, about $300 a month to raise him.
Okay.
And you just think about like therapies here, and like if he needed OT, PT,
Yep.
all these things, plus we're just talking food, like
Yeah.
feeding, that
Yeah.
sort of thing. Like it would be more than $300, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's for a family that's putting in a lot of effort. Most families don't put in that much effort. And so
Yeah.
I think just if people knew there's other ways to help. And for me, like if finances is not like we're not rolling in the dough per se.
Hmm.
So for me it looked like when I came to a new state, moved here to Washington, I really tried to be intentional about like finding some type of foster care community and getting plugged in. And then I was able to meet friends. And then once I made that relationship with certain people, I was able to say, okay, you're going on a date night.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like so choose the day,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna come over and watch your kids. And a lot of that comes with relationship as well. Like you can't probably just
Sure.
do that to like any
No.
foster care family, but
No.
um, I had an established relationship with the family and with the kids, and
Yeah.
knew their bedtime routine. I wasn't out of their normal. So I think just like figuring out like that would be like my
Hmm.
encouragement. And then the other thing is like the quote that I held on to in Honduras, that Wendy, who is not still down there and with those 3 boys actually, she would
Hmm.
always say, "Love deeply, hold loosely," and that was
Mm.
like what I like held on to. Like I didn't want a wall to be up with Judah because I knew he was going to leave me.
Yeah.
So if you are a foster parent, like
Yeah.
and I think a lot of people just say it's too hard for me to do. And like that for me, like it's like, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't step into the hard. Like
Yeah.
they need it all the more. And so like how can you love them really deeply? But like I said, hold them loosely and hold like the
Yeah.
circumstances, because even though foster care here is much better than foster care in Honduras, it still is
Yeah.
a broken system.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Much more than people realize. Okay. So, because the purpose of this podcast is to just share real stories, let people know like this is how the experiences we've had and how we have found healing. I am curious if you have 3 resources you would recommend to our listeners.
Oh, I think
What's
you're the
worked for
one.
you? What?
You were the one, I think you gave me the Connected Parent Child. What's the book called?
They're both are great. Yeah. I
I'm
think it
trying to
was The
remember which one.
Connected
I didn't
Child
read
I
both of
gave you.
them, I don't think, but
Yeah.
I think reading it was good. I read it after after I was in Honduras, but a lot of them I was like, oh, this is really good stuff. Like that was a book that I think feel like every foster family, foster whatever, like gets suggested it, but I think there's a reason. I think it's good.
Yeah.
So that, and I have really enjoyed like in this season of not being like a not being deciding for our family to not have foster kids, I guess. Um, just like being able to connect through like social media to different um accounts. There's a
Okay.
store called Good and Better, um, and they have like an Instagram, and
Okay.
they're it's run by I think a lady named Jamie. I could be getting this all wrong, but you can also just link it in the show notes. But
Okay.
they have a store with lots of cute shirts and things like that,
Yeah.
and so like foster adoptive mom things like that,
Yeah.
and kind of fun to just follow like different foster families journeys, and I think that has helped me to become more well-rounded in like I feel like I could definitely take on a foster baby, but like
Yeah.
talk to me about like a foster teenager, I'm like heck no. And so just like being able to open my eyes to different perspectives, and then especially just like trying to be open to um people's journeys that are really advocating for reintegration, and they're like pushing it. And like not that I think reintegration is great, obviously, but like just like trying to open myself to lots of different Instagram accounts so that I can get a lot of different perspectives would be probably like my other suggestion.
Okay.
And even like with that, like that has helped me to like embrace different like not like ethnicities and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just been really good to like follow different accounts. Um and I can share those accounts if you want later.
Yes, please send those to
Um
me.
I would say yeah, like those are, and then the other one that comes to mind is um I really like the Archibald Project, and I've been
Yeah.
connected with I say connected with them. They don't know I'm connected with them, but I've been connected with them since Honduras when I
Yeah.
first followed. And what I love about them is that they are very intentional with um, when they share orphanages or things like that. They're very intentional with finding ethical organizations, and
Yeah.
especially when you get to like like Africa, like those kind of countries, there's a lot of unethical adoptions that are happening.
Yeah.
So I appreciate following them and that they are willing to do that research, and then they're just really great at documenting the journeys.
Yeah.
And now their podcast is more, I feel like it's kind of like transitioned a lot over the years. Like it used to be like documenting journeys of adoptive families that were adopting a special needs kid from China or whatever it was. And now it seems like it's just more like knowledge. Like they're just providing like really good knowledge of like foster kids or foster families or whatever. So I really enjoyed that. There's also a book that I just read called Fostered. I think it's just called Fostered, and
Yeah.
it's about a girl's journey in foster care. And
Is
that
that
was
Tori Peterson?
mhm.
Yeah.
And it was
So
I just
good.
really enjoyed learning about her journey, and just like I don't have that perspective.
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
grow up like that either. And especially understanding, like hearing her explain why she would ever want to go back to her mom. Like I think
Yeah.
like we can be on the outside and like
Yeah.
we take in a kid, we're like, why would you ever want to go back to your biological
Right.
family? They're terrible. But her book was just so good at like honoring her mom and like
Yeah.
the desire to like be loved by her mom and all this, despite us looking on the outside and being like, your mom be crazy, like so I don't know, I really like that book as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are good. Thank you. Can we go back? Archibald Project. Is that social media and podcast?
Yes.
Okay. I don't think I knew that they had a podcast. I follow them on Instagram, but
And they have
um
like YouTube documentaries they've done. I think it's YouTube.
oh,
They've done like
okay.
full on documentaries as well. And it's very broad. Like they're talking about foster care, they're talking about adoption, they're talking about
Yeah.
trauma, all the things. So it's
Yeah.
just, I really enjoyed it. And the
Okay.
couple that leads it, they ended up doing an adoption. They had this organization for a very long time prior to ever doing their own adoption, but they ended up adopting 3 kids. So they are also, she in specific is fun to follow on Instagram. And especially like when she was adopting, she shared a lot about like just like the journey
Yeah.
while still trying to respect, her kids,
Yeah.
but like
Yep.
about the
Totally.
trauma of
Uh-huh.
taking on three kids that come from
Have stuff.
trauma.
Yep.
So
Totally. Yeah. Okay. Yay. Well, thank you so much for being on today. I appreciate all of your stories and knowledge and everything that you shared. And I'll see you next week in person.
yeah, I'll see you
See you
soon.
at book club.
Yeah, book club on Monday.
Okay.